Hello, everybody. Now that we've kind of got a decent handle on some of the stuff that we're going to be learning about statistics, it's time for us to start applying it to some real world stuff. So we're going to start this statistics project, which is something we usually reserve for the end of the year, but I thought it'd be something fun and manageable for us to do in my absence. So I'm going to kind of introduce this. You should have a packet in front of you that looks like this, Algebra 1 Statistics Project at the top. And I just want to kind of go over in detail what your expectations or what my expectations are for this. Kind of give you a clearer picture of what it is you'll be doing, show you an example, and let you guys get started. The idea behind this project is we actually want to create some data, or at least gather some data, and do some of the statistical analysis that we've been talking about with that data, and have it be based on something that you actually care a little bit about, as opposed to just, well, how many watermelons were purchased by the grocery store in the month of May over the past 10 years. Yeah, you guys don't really care about that, and that's cool. But there are things out there you can collect data on that you probably do care about, or at least they're a little bit curious about. So that's the purpose of this activity, is just let you see this stuff that we've been learning over the past 4 days actually show up in real life for a little bit. So what you're going to do is you are going to create a survey question, and the substitute can help you kind of come up with a question, or at least verify that your question will work for this, because you got to make sure your question can be answered numerically. So think about how many, or how much, or how often, things that are going to be able to be answered in numbers. That's a key thing I want to stress when you come up with this, is you're going to do a survey, and you've got to be able to answer that question with a number. Okay, we'll look at some examples later. Once you come up with your question, I want you to make a conjecture, or in other words, an educated guess. In science, I think they call them hypotheses. And you're going to basically guess what you think is going to happen. So let's say you say, how long on average does a student at Mount Pleasant High School spend on homework each night? And you could say, I'm going to guess they spend about 2 minutes. And I say that because I know. But that's what you got to guess. You come up with that. You turn that in with your question, basically show it to the substitute, Mr. Stauffer, and he'll be able to look at it and say, okay, good, it's done. And then you get to go do the fun part, which is collecting all of your survey data. You need to survey 40 students minimum at Mount Pleasant High School. And I will say that last year there were some students who decided that they wanted to pull around the community, and it timed up that we did this over the weekend, so they had time to go out and go to Meyer or go to their church and get other people that weren't just students at Mount Pleasant High. I can't say right now if that's going to line up or not, because we were able to start this week on a Monday and finish this day that we're talking about right now on a Friday. I don't know if it's Friday, because I don't know when I'm leaving. I feel like I'm stuck in Back to the Future or something. But the point is, um, imagine it's going to be students, but if you want to, in the time frame allowed, get your data from elsewhere, you can, but it's up to you to have your stuff ready by tomorrow or whenever the next class period is. So you collect data from 40 people. You want to make sure that you've got a relatively equal number of males and females. Maybe it won't be exactly 20-20, maybe it's like a 18-22 kind of deal, but it needs to be close between males and females. And if you're doing students, you also want to try and get your grades distributed equally. And the purpose of this is so that you could have an unbiased sample. So for instance, if we go back to that homework example, um, if you ask freshmen, and only freshmen, how much time they spend on their homework, that might be different than how often or how much time seniors spend on their homework. Maybe they spend less because they've worked hard, and so now they have an easy senior schedule. Maybe they spend more because they're like, holy crap, I screwed up my freshman year and I got to make up for it. You never know. And so it's good to get all of those differing viewpoints in there, and compare it to each other, versus only looking at freshmen and saying, okay, well, now my question isn't really about high school students, it's about freshmen. So collect your data from 40 people, 40 students. Try and divvy it up as evenly as you can between males and females, and also grades as appropriate. Then you've got to analyze your data. So you're going to do all of those measures of central tendency, which is a big fancy name for mean, median, and mode, and talk about which one is going to be your best to present. You need to create a histogram using the appropriate intervals. So these are the bends that we talked about. And you're going to also need a histogram for all your data, and then also a histogram for 2 subgroups. Okay, so that's the reason I want you to get males and females and also different grades, is because you're going to have to do some of that comparison of 2 groups thing. So again, let's go back to the homework example. You survey 40 students, 20 males, 20 females. You're going to have one histogram that shows every kid and what their data looks like. Then you're going to have another histogram that shows only the boys' responses, and a third histogram that shows only the girls' responses. Now, it doesn't have to be males versus females. It can be underclassmen versus upperclassmen. You could do freshmen versus sophomores if you don't want to talk to juniors and seniors. You could do juniors and seniors if you don't want to talk to freshmen and sophomores. But the point is, you have to have 2 subgroups that you are going to divvy your data up into. Okay, and again, I will allow you to be creative with that if you want to get crazier. However, males and females, the perfectly viable option. Underclassmen, upperclassmen, perfectly viable option. I'm giving you those options, and if you want to go further than that, by all means do so. With your histograms, you're going to have to come up with the standard deviation, and you're going to have to tell me if it's normally distributed or if it's skewed. And if it is skewed, is it positively skewed with the majority of your data on the left side, or is it negatively skewed with the majority of your data on the right side? Then you're also going to have to create box and whisker plots. So you'll have to have a box and whisker plot for all your data, and then also your 2 subgroups. Explain what that means, do some analysis, and then you also need to include a statement about your sampling techniques. So is this going to be a stratified sample? Is it going to be a systematic sample, simple random? And you also need to talk about whether your study was biased or unbiased and what you did to try and make it as unbiased as possible. You're going to take all of that information, and it's going to take a couple days to get it all together. Take all that information, you're going to put it into a slideshow presentation. Now, I say slideshow because it does not have to be PowerPoint. It could be Google Slides. There's a website called slides.com that does some pretty interesting slideshows. There's also Prezi and anything else you guys can come up with. But you need to have a presentation with all your information in it, your conjectures, your analysis, all that stuff has to be in it. Your special assignment is to Google what an outlier is, and I want you to talk about outliers in your presentation as well. And I'm not going to tell you what outliers are. I want you to Google it, I want you to find it out, and I want you to include that in your presentation. We'll do the presentation part once I get back because I want to see these and I need to grade them. I'm not going to make Mr. Stauffer do all my grading. That would just be abusing him. But during the presentation, you will be forced to ask questions, and that means you're also going to have to answer questions from your survey, so or from your presentation. So be ready for that. You want to have your presentation look nice, proper grammar, spell check, all that fun stuff. Nothing you wouldn't want to turn in. Now it says you must turn in a printed copy of your presentation right here. No, it's 2016. I don't need to see a printout. Here's the rubric. You can see basically if you do each of these things, you're going to get the 5 points. I'll knock things off that there's little bits missing, and basically I'm going to give partial credit, but the idea is you do all this stuff in your slideshow, you're going to be good. The presentation part, I will have a rubric for you, and so that's one of the reasons I'm not going to have you guys present the day I get back, because we will go over this rubric once I get there and give you guys a chance to polish anything up. But the presentation itself, the discussion, how you're able to respond to questions, all that stuff will be part of that grading as well. Let's look at some sample questions, and these are all given to you. These are all perfectly valid options. I encourage you to think of your own because these are the 16 that we came up with as teachers. You guys have your own stuff that you're into. Go for it, okay? Be creative. This activity can and will be quote unquote fun, or at least interesting if you make it interesting. It'll be mind-numbingly boring and a waste of 4 days of your life if you just do it because you have to do it. But if you pick a topic you're interested in, you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna say you'll enjoy it. You can fight me on that when I get back. So anyway, how many times have you ever cheated? How many text messages you send a day? How many hours a week you watch TV? Notice how these are all how many questions. How many? How many? How many? The key thing is you got to be able to answer in numbers. Okay, answer in numbers. I like 13 perfect squares. Who knows all those squares up to 15 squared? Anyway, all these are options. Do whatever makes sense to you. Okay. Now, this next one is a sample data collection sheet. Most of you will probably just use this one. You'll take the student's grade. So this was a ninth grader, and he was a male, since I called him he, and his response was 30 minutes a week. Or a night. That's how much he spends on homework. Okay, just to go with my previous example. So you would fill this out for all your students. You'll notice there's an extra column. That means you can do more than 40, and sometimes that gives you better data. Sometimes it gives you a prettier picture if you can get more than 40, but 40 should be enough for most of you. So for my overachievers, go forth and prosper. Fill that in as much as you want. You could also use your own data collection sheet. I had some students last year that did online surveys, so they put something together on SurveyMonkey, or they did a Google Forms. I'm not there to show you how to do that, but the internet is. So if you'd like to try an online option and collect your data that way, that's awesome. Realize that's almost definitely going to be a self-selected survey, which means you're kind of counting on other people to give you data. So make sure you get at least 40 responses. If you do something online, you got to make sure you get at least 40 responses, and also include a way to figure out who is responding. So maybe you don't need their name, but you probably need their age, you probably need their gender, whatever your subgroups are going to be. Make sure you include that information. And finally, then we have the schedule. So today is day one. You are going to select your survey question, get it approved by Mr. Stauffer. And again, that's just verifying really that your question is going to have a number for an answer. So, you can't say, well, I can't even think of a good example. Do you like pizza? Yes or no. That's not a good survey question for this. Okay, you cannot do yes or no, because you can't make a yes or no histogram. You can't make a yes or no box and whisker plot. How often do you eat pizza a year? That might be a good question, although I don't know who keeps track of that kind of thing, but who knows. You need to design a plan for how you're going to collect your data, and finally create your survey and print it off. Now, if you're just using this, there it is, it's done for you, and you would just write your survey question up at the top. But if you're trying to do something online, or you're trying to do something else that's not exactly just right off of the thing I give you, you need to have all that stuff done by today, so that overnight your homework is to collect all your data. You want to come to school tomorrow with all your data collected. That way, day two, we do have it set up where you're going to be able to visit other classrooms if you're not able to get all your data, or something happens and you're not able to get any of your data. We will have access to another classroom during class time where you can go and collect your data. But that means you're going to have less time to find all your measures of central tendency, your standard deviation, talk about if it's biased or unbiased. I am going to cut this out, the population parameter. We are not doing that. So yes, there's that. Day three, you should have all your data collected by now, no questions asked. And now we're going to go to the computer lab, create a histogram, create our histogram of the subsets, box and whisker plots, which you will have to do by hand. I do not know of a good program that creates box and whisker plots. We found one last year online just by Googling create box and whisker plot. It was garbage. I mean, it did it, but it didn't do it very good. For some kids, it would do something really weird and it would make it look really crappy. The kids who had the best results, they just kind of drew a box and whisker plot in PowerPoint and then labeled it. So that takes some time. So that's why we have a whole day in the computer lab just to make the graphs. We have a second day then in the computer lab to polish the rest of the PowerPoint, get the rest of your text and stuff in, add animations, add clip art, add pictures, any of that stuff. And then finally, when I return, we'll have one day back, and then that second day we will use to do the presentations. And that, I believe, is the gist of what we're doing for this project. So if you have questions, forward them to Mr. Stauffer, work together. Obviously, I can't answer them, so figure it out. Have fun with this, though, guys. Make it something you can be interested in, because I think I think it can be. I think it can be. And the kids last year I know enjoyed it, so hopefully you guys will too. Okay. Um, that's it.